taking time off or taking vacations and trips is a great way to stress test your team. It's a great way to see how effective your managers and leaders are. It's a great way to see how can things get done without me, because the best businesses and the best firms are the ones that are not dependent upon the firm owner. I'm Michael Mogul, founder and CEO of Crisp, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. Crisp started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer.
This is Jessica, Head of Coaching Strategy at Crisp, and today we're flipping the script for another special edition episode to get Michael's take on why taking time off is essential for long-term success and how to do it without feeling guilty, how to stay energized and keep pushing forward without ever slowing down, and how thinking like a corporate athlete can help you balance personal well-being with leading a fast-growing business, keeping you at the top of your game.
I find that the business leaders that are as dedicated to their health and their fitness are more present in their lives in terms of not just the business, but also personally with their family, with their kids, and so on. And they also tend to be better decision makers, and they're more engaged, not to mention they set a better example for the organization as a whole. So if you want to have like a healthy organization, it starts with you.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. Here we are, an exciting AMMA today.
It's exciting. Still on the road to the summit.
Yes, we are.
It's the month of October. Summit is in November. It's exciting. It's an exciting time. I always get excited this time of year. You know, you just kind of, the alter ego comes out, like that inner savage. You just start getting ready because you don't want to let anybody down. People have expectations. You want to deliver a great event and a great experience. And we've been working our tails off all year long on this. So looking forward to that. But I also heard just before we even started recording that our youngest daughter is about to start
mini ninja classes.
Yeah, she's going to be a ninja. I like it. So what do they even do?
It is a little obstacle course class of gymnastics. So we all know Misha can climb on literally anything and everything. So I think this is going to be a perfect fit for her.
Oh, she's going to love it. You're going to love it. But it's funny because they have like 2 kids, same house, same upbringing, couldn't be more different because the other one doesn't want to be in the mini ninjas.
Oh no, she's going to be doing a little more tumbling and other gymnastics, but not the obstacle course.
I love it. I can't wait. I can't wait to see Misha in that mini ninjas. She's going to be like, there's probably going to be little boys in there too, and she's going to be just throwing elbows and stuff and running through them.
The little bully. She
just bodying these fools,
you
know?
Yeah. She takes what's hers. We'll say that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know where she gets that. It's not like we taught her.
She maybe looks like you and maybe acts like you. I don't know. Just an assumption.
It's just nature versus nurture. So I love it. I love it. All right. So I'm excited today. We got another AMMA. You guys submit the questions and we answer those questions here on this podcast right now. If you have a question, you can text us at 404-531-7691. And this is one of a few different types of episodes on the podcast. We've got our traditional interview format. We bring in guests from the legal industry and beyond. And then we also have our encore editions. We bring back some of our most popular episodes. And something you might notice on this podcast is that we don't run any ads and there's no paid sponsorships or anything like that, which allows us and our guests to be able to say whatever they want, we want, etc. No filter, no censorship, nothing like that. And it's empowering, right? I mean, we've had opportunities to bring on sponsors and I'm sure they could help support the costs of doing the podcast, but then you give up a little bit of that freedom. And you didn't start a business to give up freedom, you started a business to gain the freedom. So we're going to continue to offer the podcast for free and unfiltered. The only ask that we have is that if you get any sort of value from this podcast, that you go and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen to this thing. That helps us reach more people and get better guests on the show. And if you could do so right now, you could actually do it while you're listening. That'd be a huge help. That's all that we ask as you listen to this free podcast. Did I mention it was free? What do we got this week?
All right. So this week, talk about relaxation.
Oh, something I know nothing about, but go ahead.
You're not going to be able to know anything about it because we don't relax, but that's the point. So, Michael, I've been hearing a lot about burnout from other firm owners, and I'm wondering if it's inevitable. How do I keep going full throttle when building my business without burning out?
Okay.
It's a tale.
Here we go. I really do think that sometimes people submit these questions Maybe they listen to other episodes and they're like, how do I set them off, right? And this is one of those questions because the whole idea around burnout, I do think it's a potentially fundamentally flawed concept because there's this belief out there that if you continue to run yourself like crazy, working crazy hours, working nonstop, that you're going to hit a point where it's like somebody spilled water on the electronics, right? And you just short circuit and you just burn out, right? And whatever happens at that point, oh no, so what happens after the burnout, right? Is it just like you self-destruct, you melt? This is an AMA. This is going to be potentially a controversial, maybe a divisive perspective. And I don't believe that burnout is a real thing. And let me illustrate as an example, right? Because someone's like, wait a second, I disagree. Let me explain. Okay, this is why we do long form podcasts, right? This is why this is an excellent medium because you can hear answers and you don't have to just hear sound bites. Okay, let's say you're working crazy hours, 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week, 100 hours a week, right? That means you're not sleeping a whole lot and you're exhausted and then you're working like crazy and you just get to this point where you're so frustrated and you can't even imagine going on and continuing to do this and you say, I am burnt out. Then you get a knock on the door and somebody comes in and says, you know what? Let's say your name is Jerry and they say, hey, Jerry, you just won $100 million. How do you feel? You still feel burnt out? Probably not. And you went from like this peak where you sound burnt out. And then in a split second, you weren't any longer. So why is that? And the reality of it is like typically what people label as burnout, is that they are probably stressed out, frustrated. They're experiencing a lot of setbacks and adversity. Things aren't going their way. They're probably not very good at what they're doing because they're ultimately not getting the outcomes that they want. And as a result, because of that, they say, I am burnt out. The other big reason, and perhaps even the bigger reason, is they don't have a powerful enough why behind what they're doing. I don't know if Mother Teresa ever got burnt out or if Gandhi ever got burnt out. And let's say your powerful why was around helping children that are victims of sex trafficking, for example. You'd be like, well, you probably work nonstop 24/7. You wouldn't feel burnt out. Similarly, when you were starting your law firm and you were working, like, let's say 90 hours a week, 100 hours a week, you probably weren't thinking about burnout because you had a powerful vision and you had a powerful mission. And maybe this is an opportunity to re-examine what your vision is, and maybe you need a bigger vision. Maybe the vision that you had before is now no longer serving you, and that's as a result, that's why you're feeling potentially burnt out. But if you had a bigger cause, well, that could cure that or alleviate it. And again, this is not saying that you shouldn't sleep and that you shouldn't rest and that you shouldn't recover and that you shouldn't take care of yourself. That's not what I'm talking about. But sometimes I think people work a few, late hours and they say I'm burnt out and they, assign this label to themselves. And now they are like this victim of burnout and they're thinking that like I somehow like what is it? Like a candle, right? Like the candle has gone out. I need to be reignited, but I'm burnt out. I need a cure. And the reality of it is that if you were kicking ass and if everything was going your way, you probably wouldn't be feeling this way. And you're probably frustrated. Of course you're tired. That all makes sense. But if there's something that could just switch from burnout to not burnout in a split second, like literally deposited $100 million in your bank account, you probably wouldn't be feeling burnt out. So maybe re-examine this condition that you've assigned yourself to. And again, back to the question, how do you avoid this? Well, you avoid this by not assigning this label. And if you say it's not real, well, then guess what? You can never get it, right? You can never be burned out. Or you start to realize really what it is in terms of the symptoms is probably like the root issue is, are you taking care of yourself physically? You probably don't have a very full cup, right? So assessing that. And then it also could be a function of how strong is your why in terms of why it is that you're doing. If you have a strong enough why, you can pretty much do anything, right? You can be a man or woman on a mission, possessed, like a man or woman possessed, okay? So just think about that. And I really do think the first step is saying, okay, this isn't real.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. All right. So question number 2, again, leaning into this time off relaxation thing. So Michael, I feel guilty taking time off because I know how much my team relies on me. How do you go on vacation without feeling like you're letting everyone down?
Well, I find, and especially my conversations with a lot of business owners all the time, I used to struggle with this a lot too, in that we feel this immense guilt. It's just like difficult to step away from the business. It's difficult to go on vacation. Even when you do go on your vacation, you bring your laptop, you're responding to emails, you're still working, like you just feel guilty because you think, well, I want to set a good example. And if I'm relaxing, what's going to happen back at the office where they need me or clients need to be responded to? And it cannot go on without me. And it's just establishing this identity, which is really what it is, that you are so necessary. And you might think, well, Mike, but I am necessary. You don't understand. Well, here's the thing. how do you get around this without feeling guilty? I mean, first of all, it's really looking at the perspective of, okay, are you giving yourself permission to go on vacation? And also, when you do leave, are you setting people up for success? So, for example, you shouldn't just leave everything open, right? You can assign things to certain people. You can create, I mean, every time, for example, in our company, if somebody ever takes like PTO, paid time off, there's always a plan. So while they're out, here's what the coverage looks like. Here's who's going to do what. Because our rule is always like, yeah, no problem. Take PTO just as long as we don't feel your absence. It's the same thing as ensuring that, you know, who's going to respond to whom, like people are, you know, cross-trained on different things so that you can go on vacation. And the best way to go is to go and not bring your laptop and to go and like delete the, you know, the apps, Slack, Teams, email, etc. Because the real purpose of vacation is to be fully present wherever you're at and then to come back restored and re-energized and ready to kick ass.
Yeah.
So, and you'd want to encourage the same thing for your team. I really do think it's the type of example that you set. Like vacation is not a bad thing.
Correct.
I think that if people are leaving others hanging, right, whenever somebody's out, somebody else is screwed, well then, before you know it, you're going to start resenting people when they're leaving and taking time off. But if you can establish the right environment to where, like, you know, of course, like we want you to take time off. Like we used to do, you know, remember this unlimited paid time off, which is like the biggest bullshit ever. So when companies do this, we found, because we thought, hey, you know what?
It's a great benefit.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Unlimited PTO, everyone's going to love it. But what we found in practice is that then people felt more guilty taking time off because it could be like unlimited amount of days.
Yes.
And in reality, it's like you want people to take time off because the whole purpose of time off is that people can, you know, come back restored and re-energized. It's actually better to offer a fixed amount of days that we encourage people to use up every year.
Right.
But when companies say unlimited, we're so amazing. Okay, well, unlimited. Okay, so you're saying at your company, I can come in and I can take 4 months off? Back to back? No, technically, but you said unlimited.
Right.
You said unlimited. Now, like, so it really just creates this almost like anxiety around taking any days off when it's unlimited because you haven't defined parameters. But again, coming back to this, I mean, I know business owners, you know, this day running like 8 and 9 figure companies still feel guilty taking time off.
Yeah.
And it's a psychological issue, right, that they have to get over or not. I mean, it's up to them. Like, you don't have to take time off if you don't want to. But if you want to get over the guilt, you start off by just giving yourself permission. And if you set up a great transition plan while you're out in terms of ensuring everything is covered, right, it's really like a coverage plan, then you shouldn't feel guilty because you know everything's being handled. And in fact, you might find that if you are actually taking time off or taking vacations and trips, is a great way to stress test your team. It's a great way to see how effective your managers and leaders are. It's a great way to see, like, how can things get done without me? Because the best businesses and the best firms are the ones that are not dependent upon the firm owner. So it's a great opportunity to see, well, how does our organization function when I'm not here for a week, 2 weeks, or, you know, whatever length of time? And if it can't function, then that probably says that you either don't have the right people or you don't have the right systems and perhaps a process issue or a training issue. And then that's an opportunity to learn and improve those things.
Absolutely. The only caveat I would add is, because you've talked about it many times before, is like you have to do your time as an entrepreneur. But if you're just getting started, maybe know your time and place of when to take a vacation. Because I mean, it was probably 8-10 years before we ever took a vacation completely disconnected.
Correct. Now, okay, this actually raises a good point, because then, you know, sometimes people hear this and there's the overcorrection. And I see this with a lot of newer entrepreneurs where someone put in their brain that like they should always be on vacation.
Right.
And then they're taking a trip every week, every other week, and their business is flailing. Right. So, but they're like presenting like this lifestyle, like everything's amazing, everything's great. Here I am in this faraway land and I'm staying at the Ritz, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and you look at their office and it's just a complete disaster and it's a complete shit show. And there's really just absentee ownership. And that's what it is. Nobody has any clarity. Nobody has any direction, but there they are always on vacation. So, I mean, again, it's their business. They can do whatever they want, but I would say that's probably a bit irresponsible.
Yes.
So we really didn't start taking trips until we had all those pieces in place and we had a great team in place. That's the way it was.
All right. So to round us out today with question number 3, Michael, I've been pushing hard for the past few years running my firm and I'm feeling exhausted. How do you balance taking care of yourself while also driving the business forward?
So these two things are not or mutually exclusive things. They go hand in hand. The way that you can be in peak state is by taking care of yourself. The way you can grow your business and be effective is by taking care of yourself. It's not like I'm going to grow the business and my health's going to slip. And I mean, because I've been through this. I know a lot of business owners have, but the way to look at it is like the one serves the other and vice versa. Okay, so what helped me years ago is just kind of reframing my role, even as a leader, as really a corporate athlete. And just as if you see in like professional sports, just as like professional athletes have a duty, what they're doing in the off season, what they're doing outside of games in terms of how they're taking care of themselves, because your roles, I mean, especially you see this in professional sports, you need to be on the field. You want to be able to have, like, to be active on the field. You don't want to be sitting on the bench or, in the IR, like the injured reserve. How do you make contributions if you're not contributing? So the goal is to have as many like healthy peak state days so that you can be as effective as humanly possible. Not to mention that if you're stumbling into the office all like exhausted, I don't know any other way to put it, you're just all fucked up. Okay. Well, that's probably going to affect your decision making.
Yeah.
And your decision making is probably the single most important aspect of what you do as a leader, because if you make the right decisions, the business grows. And if you make the wrong decisions, bad things happen and you typically lose money. So decision making is important. Do you want to make decisions when you're exhausted and compromised and just not in a good state? Or do you want to make decisions when you have mental clarity and you're energized and you got your shit together? Which person do you think is going to make better decisions? So how do you do it? You start treating this literally like your job. So like your job is not just you in your law firm to lead your firm. Your job is to ensure that when you're not there, that you're recovering and restoring yourself so that you're set up to win every minute that you're working on your firm, you're energized and engaged and effective. So like for me, for example, I get up early. I get up 5 a.m. like every single morning, and I mean every day, not just Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday included. And there's like the whole health routine, right? There's walk a few miles with a weighted vest. There's working out. There's the sauna. There's the cold plunge. Then throughout the day, like eating healthy meals, like no processed foods, no sugar, like I don't drink, that sort of thing. And I do these things not because I'm trying to be a good boy. I do these things because I find that if I don't do them, I cannot be as effective of a leader, right? And it comes down to like, what example do you want to set? It also requires discipline, which you've helped me with in this respect, of going to bed early. Go to bed by 9:30, right? Because you're not going to get up at 5 a.m. if you go to bed at 2 a.m.
Correct.
So sleep is important. Sleep quality is important. All these things are just as important, like in terms of like how you restore and recover outside of the office, is so that you show up on game day, which is every day when you're actually working on your firm, that you are energized and engaged. So instead of looking at it as, okay, well, because I know a lot of people, they work really hard and then outside of that, they just like sleep in and they, just try to like recover like sleep debt, or sometimes they like work really hard in the firm and then the minute they have like, a night off or something, they go out drinking with their buddies and then they're even more exhausted and it's just like a cycle that continues to repeat. So they never come in restored. And then they wonder, like, why am I making poor decisions and why am I've turned into an absolute slob? Well, it's because you're not serious. You're not a serious person because you don't take this seriously. You're an amateur. I don't know how else to put it. It's just as important. They say, oh, I don't know if I have time like you to do all this stuff. Listen, motherfucker, okay? So every single morning, I'm able to get the miles in, I'm able to get the workout in. We see our kids. We drop off our kids. We get to our morning huddle every morning by 8:55. And then there's other people that wake up at 8:30 and then they're stumbling in, right? So you'd be amazed at what you can do. Wake up earlier. Go to bed earlier.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's difficult to, find healthy food. Like you're just creating these barriers, okay? You know what? You're right. You're right. It's difficult. You're right. Maybe you should be a slob. Maybe there's no hope for you. You're right. Your excuses are right. They're not excuses. Everything is valid. Do you feel better now? Right? But the reality of it is if you start taking this stuff seriously, you start to take ownership over being a corporate athlete. And I find that the business leaders that are as dedicated to their health and their fitness are more present in their lives in terms of not just the business, but also personally with their family, with their kids, and so on. And then they also tend to be better decision makers and they're more engaged, not to mention they set a better example for the organization as a whole. So if you want to have like a healthy organization, it starts with you.
Absolutely. All right. And that's all we have today on relaxation.
All right. Enjoyed it. Until next time.
You've been listening to the Game Changing Attorney podcast with Michael Mogul. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that we can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of Michael's book absolutely free at gamechangingattorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot Michael a text at 404-531-7691 and ask him any question you'd like. You might just hear the answer on the next episode. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it will help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on this episode, see the show notes in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.